Right friends, welcome back to Editorial Discussion. Today is 14th February and today we have taken 4 articles of the Hindu, then one from Live Mint, one from Times of India, and we are going to deliberate on 3 important aspects. One is with regard to North Korea, second is with regard to Union Budget critical appraisal, third with regard to Donald Trump, and 2 issues after the articles in Donald Trump we are going to deliberate. Overall, there are 4 aspects in today's editorial. The first one is about North Korea. North Korea conducted missile test, and all of you are familiar with North Korea. In recent times, it is conducting nuclear tests as well as missile tests, and its main target is United States of America, and it wants to develop intercontinental ballistic missile, and it already conducted nuclear tests, and through intercontinental ballistic missiles it want to dump one nuclear bomb on United States of America. Its long term goal appears to be that. In that direction it is working on it. And let us look at certain aspects as far as North Korea is concerned. Actual name is Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and here I would like to concentrate on certain aspects of North Korea and who can stop North Korea's missile program as well as the nuclear tests. Who is in a position to stop North Korea's missile program as well as nuclear tests? And before going into that aspect in detail, I just listed out various aspects with regard to North Korea, because North Korea is quite frequently in the news. It is Democratic People's Republic of Korea and capital is Pyongyang, and other important aspect is it got a land boundary with 3 countries. This is very important. Please look into this. This is a Korean Peninsula. Korean Peninsula means both North Korea, South Korea put together is the Korean Peninsula. Please look into this. This is South Korea, this is North Korea, and North Korea has got border with 3 countries. It has got a long border with China, and demilitarized zone with South Korea, and at the same time small border with Russia. So if someone talks about North Korea borders, these things are very important. It has got a long border with China and border with South Korea and a small border with Russia. So it has got border with 3 countries. And other important aspect is North Korea and South Korea have got this demilitarized zone, and here armistice was signed in 1953. You may have a doubt what is meant by armistice. Armistice is the first step before peace treaty. So after armistice, peace treaty was never signed, and technically both the countries are at war because peace treaty could not be signed till date, right. So this longest demilitarized zone is between North Korea and South Korea. And if you look at further aspects, I have written certain aspects pertaining to North Korea, because North Korea is into the news quite frequently, and these things are very important. It is one of the world's most secretive societies. What is being happened inside? Very few things are known to the outside world. Second thing is, it is rigidly maintained isolation from the rest of the world. That is one important point, and its closest ally is China. This is another important point. Not only having the longest border with China, but also it maintained closest relations with China. And there are news reports that systematic human rights violations are taking place, and the economy is controlled by the state, and the country is under strict sanctions of United Nations because of its missile and nuclear programs, and the supreme leader is known for his unpredictable behavior. You may ask, who is the supreme leader? Kim Jong-un. He is the supreme leader since 2011, and he is known for his unpredictable behavior, right. So having learned this, let us look at the important aspect. What is the way out? There are several missile as well as nuclear tests are going on. As I have already told you, the ultimate destiny, or you can say the ultimate goal of developing these programs by North Korea is United States of America. And here North Korea is 100% dependent on China for oil and food products. If not 100%, at least up to 80 to 90%, it is dependent on one country in the world, that is China. So, China can only stop nuclear and missile program of North Korea. China is the country which can only stop the missile or nuclear program of China. Missile and nuclear program of North Korea, but China is not doing deliberately. What are the reasons? Please look into these 5 points. China is in a position to stop missile program as well as nuclear development of North Korea, but China is not doing because of its own reasons. I listed 5 reasons here. The first one is China is very much sure that North Korea's nuclear program or missile program will definitely not target China. That is one important aspect. Second point is China is not happy with United States of America, as United States of America is interfering in the territorial dispute of South China Sea. Right? That is another point. And another important aspect is this terminal high altitude area defense or third anti-ballistic missile. This third anti-ballistic missile is being established in South Korea by United States of America, and China is not happy with this development. China became furious as United States of America is establishing the third anti-ballistic missile system in South Korea. This is another reason. And the next point is, if North Korea collapses, then millions of refugees will definitely go to China, which China is not ready for that. Then the fifth point is, if North Korea collapses, then ultimately with the help of United States of America, unified Korean peninsula may happen and China will never like it in its backyard. So, because of all these 5 reasons, China is not stopping missile program or nuclear program of North Korea, right. So, after this article, we have discussed in detail about North Korea and who can stop the missile or nuclear program of North Korea in detail. So, the key is China. So, what is the final way out? Final way out is Xi Jinping and Donald Trump must sit together to find the answers for this vexed issue. But the biggest $1,000,000 question is whether Xi Jinping and Donald Trump are ready for that, right. So, look at the next article. One article is The Hindu. This is swimming out of a numerical soup. This is critical appraisal of Union Budget 2017-18. And there is another important article in Live Mint. This is written by Deepak Nair and famous economist, and these 2 articles I have combined, and this article Union Budget, Right Priorities, Flawed Macroeconomics. After going through these 2 articles, I have written critical appraisal of Union Budget 2017-18, and please do not forget, we are going to present Union Budget 2017-18 most probably tomorrow in 3 parts. So, Union Budget will be presented by Learning Space in 3 parts, and this is with regard to critical appraisal after the presentation of budget. I have listed out 17 points, and when you analyze critically, the first and the foremost point is this budget is to be viewed in the backdrop of demonetization of November 8, and international lending organizations like IMF clearly stated that the GDP is going to be reduced by around 1% subsequent to demonetization. That is why you have to see this from that perspective. The second point is, these 3 things are very important. One is, for the first time, this plan and non-plan classification was taken out. And please do not forget, 12th 5-year plan will be the last, and 5-year plans will become history from March 31, 2017. And the second important point is, after 1924, for the first time, railway budget was merged with the union budget. And third important point is this, to eliminate vote on account, this budget presentation is preponed, or you can say advanced by 1 month, that is to February 1st instead of February 28th. So, these 3 changes took place from this year's budget. The next point is, government has achieved the desired fiscal deficit target. Initially, it has stated that it will achieve fiscal deficit target of 3.5% of GDP for 2016-17. That means the current financial year, and government has achieved it. And for 2017-18, government kept fiscal deficit target of 3.2%. So, government has voted for fiscal prudence. And there is a opinion in some section of the economists that government can go up to 3.5% of GDP fiscal deficit, but government voted for path of fiscal prudence, basically to impress the foreign investors, because foreign investors will look at fiscal deficit as well as macroeconomic stability, and to give that point, probably the finance minister has gone for 3.2% fiscal deficit, basically to maintain path of fiscal prudence. And the next point is, expenditure is forecast to grow at 6.6% compared to 12% during 2016-17. And more than the expenditure, what is important is capital expenditure. And in the union budget, please look at capital expenditure. Capital expenditure is very much important, and out of the total expenditure, unfortunately this year also the capital expenditure is just 14% and revenue expenditure is 86%. And one should aim for more and more capital expenditure, less and less revenue expenditure, which is not taking place, and more capital expenditure gives more and more assets, and which will result in the future generations. That means it will benefit the future generations. Right. So, here the expenditure is forecast to grow at 6.6% compared to 12% in 16-17. The next one is gross tax revenues. 2016-17, tax revenues have grown by 17%. In 2016-17, the gross tax revenues have grown by 17%, and this year, that means 2017-18, they are expected to grow at just 12%. So, this point you may have a doubt why this happened. This happened because of the reason last year oil prices were substantially low in the international market. Crude oil prices were substantially low in international market during the current financial year, and gradually they are rising. And next year the government may not have that elbow room to increase this excise duties on these petroleum products. So, that is the reason why this expansion, that is 17% in 2016-17, came down to 12%, that is revenue, right. So, gross tax revenue is expected to increase 12% in 2017-18 instead of 17% during the current financial year. And in the personal income tax, government is expecting an increase of 25%, and it appears to be over optimistic. 25% rise in personal income tax appears to be over optimistic. The next one is significant increases in expenditure allocations for many sectors and schemes with fiscal deficit of 3.2% appears to be overestimating revenue. This point I would like to make it clear. Fiscal deficit target is kept at 3.2%, and that is possible when the expected revenue is met. The expected revenue, if you look at some of the items, there is a provision of 72,500 crores for disinvestment, 72,500 crores for disinvestment, and the when you look at meeting the target for disinvestment, it is almost a failure for the past few years, and this year also meeting this target may not be that easy. This is another point if you look at Union Budget 2017-18. The next important aspect is there is allocations and outlays for expenditure budget emphasized more priority for agriculture, rural development, infrastructure, social sector, and out of total expenditure 36% is given for agriculture, rural development, infrastructure, social sector, which is quite substantial and at the same time which is appreciable, and this is assumed lot of significance in view of the fact the government's total expenditure, out of total expenditure of the government, 37% is going for interest payments, subsidies and defense. Even though 37% is going for interest payments, subsidies and defense, government has done lot of good job in allocating more and more resources for agriculture, rural sector, infrastructure, social sector, which constitutes 36% of total expenditure. The next one is, this is unfortunate part. Capital expenditure must be increased because capital expenditure is basically for creation of assets. Unless assets are created, what is the future of the next generations? Normally, capital expenditure will give returns in the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So, capital expenditure must be increased, but unfortunately, capital expenditure part in the total expenditure is just 14% and revenue expenditure is 86%. And this is not changing year after year, and it is worsening almost year after year. Please look into the next point. Capital expenditure as a proportion of GDP in 2016-17 was 1.86%. 1.86% as a percentage of GDP is capital expenditure in 2016-17, and in 2017-18 unfortunately it reduced slightly to 1.83%. So, capital expenditure is not increasing. That is one of the biggest worries. Then reduction in income tax for the first slab 10% to 5%. It is a welcome step, no doubt about it, but there is a discontinuous rate structure because 5% up to 5 lakhs and 20% from 5 lakhs to 10 lakhs. That is in fact discontinuous rate structure. And another important aspect to note is the total tax revenue in India is low at 11% of GDP. Total tax revenue in India is low at 11% of GDP, and there is a need to increase it significantly to increase public expenditure. And another important aspect from the budget is corporate tax rate reduced to 25% from 30% for the firms with annual turnover below rupees 50 crore. So, for the firms annual turnover below rupees 50 crore, the corporate tax rate reduced from 30% to 25%, and the negative aspect if you look at this point is it may encourage bigger units to split up so as to enjoy lower tax rate. This point is significant. There is every possibility that some of the corporates may split and reduce them to below 50 crores so as to get the advantage of lesser corporate tax. Right friends, look at the next one. The promise to double the farmer's income within 5 years. Government's intention is to double the farmer's income by 2022, and there are no steps in this direction. Lot of emphasis is given for agriculture sector, no doubt about it. Soil health cards to all the farmers, and in 2017-18 50% of the area to be brought under Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, long term irrigation fund of total 40,000 crores which is to be maintained by NABARD. Lot many things are there, but the budget is not specific about how to increase the farmers income to, that means how to double the farmers income by 2022. And budget proposal, a ceiling of 2000 rupees on cash donations to political parties. In the budget, there is a proposal to limit cash donations to rupees 2000 from earlier rupees 20,000, but this do not take away the corruption aspect in political parties. In fact, this is a step in the right direction, but there is every possibility that this may not clean up the system completely. If you look at the next point, there is a provision in the finance bill, that is section 132, which says that tax authority will not have to disclose to any person the reasons for conducting search or seizure. And in some quarters, there is a feeling that it may lead to tax terrorism. This may empower tax authorities and it may lead to tax terrorism. And another important aspect is, in the budget, there is not much emphasis on tackling the issues of jobless growth, Make in India, and the problem of falling exports. As per these articles, there is not much emphasis in budget with regard to jobless growth. Nowadays, the growth is jobless, at the same time Make in India, and at the same time the problem of falling exports, these issues were not properly attended to in the union budget. If you look at the next point, there is a downturn in domestic economy after demonetization, and there are several problems with regard to advanced economies, anti-immigrant policies, protectionist policies, and under these circumstances, there is a need for revival of domestic consumption and domestic investment. Moreover, inflation is also under limit nowadays, and at the same time, current account deficit also reduced substantially, and overall the crux of the article is, especially the article in the Mint, basically says that under these circumstances, fiscal policy should be expansionary to stimulate the economy, and the budget is conservative from this perspective. That means, what is the meaning of expansionary fiscal policy? Expansionary fiscal policy is more and more investment so as to propel growth, more and more government capital expenditure so as to propel growth. That is expansionary fiscal policy. Sometimes government can borrow more, and the basic idea is, if government spends more under the present circumstances, it will give boost to GDP, right. So, this is the crux of these two articles, and the finance minister could have resorted to more spending, either through increasing borrowing by the government or by increasing revenue receipts through taxes. So, that is the main crux of these articles, right. We discussed several points. Basically, this is critical appraisal of 2017-18 budget. Overall, it felt that it should be expansionary fiscal policy, but it is conservative, right. 3 articles with regard to Donald Trump. There are 2 articles in the Hindu. One is the dark clouds over American academia. Second one is finance and facade. Third one is Trump's soothing bomb. This is in Times of India. And from these 2 articles, I listed out as 2 issues. The first issue is Donald Trump during his first days, what signals he is giving to the world as a whole. That issue I am tackling as first issue, and the second issue is with regard to global competitiveness of United States of America. Global competitiveness of United States of America, how it is going to affect, how it is going to be affected because of the policies of Donald Trump. So, I am concentrating on these 2 issues. The first one is Donald Trump initial days. Trump's old face. What is the meaning of old face? That means he uttered something and immediately he reversed his decision. That is old face. That means on one China policy, now Donald Trump stated that he will honor 44-year-old one China policy. And initially he stated that he will not honor one China policy. He took phone call from Taiwanese president, and subsequently Donald Trump stated that he will honor one China policy, and all these things basically will embolden China, and China will try to increase its sphere of influence in Asia Pacific region. The second point is Donald Trump stated that he is pulling out of Trans-Pacific Partnership. In fact, the pulling out of United States of America from Trans-Pacific Partnership will give edge for China. China now will dominate the international trade, and China will dictate the terms. China will frame its own terms. So, that is highly advantageous for China. Look at the third point. He abruptly ended phone call with the Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull. He abruptly ended the phone call with Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, and Australia is considered to be all-time ally of United States of America, and United States of America has got almost all-time allies in the form of Japan, Australia, and now Australia may tilt towards China. Please do not forget, Australia's largest trade partner is China. Australia is quite rich in natural resources, and because of those natural resources, now Australia became largest trading partner with China. Now, because of abrupt ending of phone call by Donald Trump, there is every possibility Australia may tilt towards China. Next point is, China is giving generous aid to countries from Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Philippines. It is giving aid generously. A case in point is billions of dollars of aid to Bangladesh, which was announced recently by China when its President Xi Jinping visited Bangladesh. And it is generously aiding to several Asian countries, and basically this will give towards Chinese, basically these countries may tilt towards China because of economic clout of China. And now Vietnam is also trying to shift towards its policies towards China, and recently Vietnam is also reviewing its policy for cooperating with China, and now there will be dramatic shift in the attitude of these Asian nations towards China, away from United States of America, and Trump's policies are further alienating these countries, and there is every possibility that they may shift towards China. Next point is, there is also old phase with regard to Japan. As far as Japan is concerned, initially Donald Trump stated that Japan will be left to build its own nuclear defense, but now Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited United States of America, and now both the countries affirmed that US-Japan Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security, and this covers contentious Senkaku Islands also. And Senkaku Islands are disputed islands between China and Japan. They are situated in East China Sea, and now United States of America Japan Treaty of Mutual Cooperation and Security will cover those islands also. So, this is another old phase by Donald Trump with regard to Japan. Next point is, joint statement by United States of America and Japan specifically stated that they will oppose any unilateral action that seeks to undermine Japan's administration of these islands. So, that means in South China Sea, freedom of navigation, overflight will be protected. So, this is the statement, this is joint statement of USA and Japan. So, these are the initial days, but overall initial days actions by Donald Trump will definitely help China, right. So, China may become leader in this Asia Pacific region as the initial direction of Donald Trump has got any indication. Right friends, the second issue is with regard to one article in The Hindu, and this is Donald Trump's actions and US global competitiveness. Globally, United States is competitive because of its excellent educational institutions. Because of its excellent educational institutions, United States of America became globally talented, competitive country. And because of Donald Trump actions, how it is going to affect United States of America's competitiveness? Any question can be asked in this direction. I listed out 10 points. Please go through these points. First point is, public research universities may suffer because of budget cuts. Public research universities may suffer because of some budget cuts, but top private universities may not suffer much because of huge endowments of billions of dollars. You may have a doubt what is meant by endowment. Endowments means in United States of America or in advanced countries, the students and the industrialists who were benefited because of those institutions will donate billions of dollars, and these are endowments. And the student who became billionaire after having graduated from MIT, he will donate billions of dollars to educational institutions, that is endowments. Top US universities like Stanford, they have billions of dollars of endowments, and government's policies may not affect much top universities. Then the next point is, long term future is less bright because there are challenges, because there will be problems in hiring international best talent because of immigration policies, anti-immigration policies. The institutions may suffer in long term because it may be difficult to appoint international best talent because of protectionist policies being adopted in United States of America. Next point is, grants and loans for students likely to be reduced, hence debt burden on students may increase, and for profit higher education industry is likely to prosper because Obama administration imposed certain restrictions subsequent to scandals in some institutions, and now Donald Trump is expected to remove those restrictions, and for profit higher education institutions, some of the institutions may prosper. And the next point is, the anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim and xenophobic stance by Donald Trump administration, how it is going to affect international students and faculty, it is too early to say, but definitely it will have its impact. Next point is, overall the presence of international faculty and leadership is a substantial factor in US higher education's excellence, and that will reduce, and however top universities may be less affected, and international students or the best faculty now may look for alternative destinations like Canada, New Zealand, Australia or continental Europe. The next point is, the future for H1B visas as well as the scholarship programs is also not looking bright, and there is likelihood of more protests and student activism in universities in the near future. So, overall the US leadership in global higher education, both in terms of its excellence and its place as the leading host country for international students, is in jeopardy. So, this is the final conclusion. Overall, the higher educational institutions and global competitiveness is going to be affected, right. So, we deliberated many aspects today: North Korea, then critical analysis of union budget, then Donald Trump, and two important aspects. The first aspect pertaining to the global competitiveness of US universities, and the second one is Donald Trump and initial days in action. Right friends, with this let us conclude editorial discussion. Please do join at 12 o'clock for comprehension discussion. Have a nice day. Thank you. Thanks a lot.